Dr. Edison de Mello is the founder and chief medical officer of the Akasha Center for Integrative Medicine in Santa Monica, California, a healing sanctuary where all parts that compromise human beings, mind, body, and spirit, are addressed equally. He's a board certified integrative physician and also a licensed psychotherapist. Dr. de Mello's journey into integrative medicine began with his grandmother in his hometown of Rio de Janeiro, who instilled in him a deep appreciation for holistic healing practices from a very early age. His PhD dissertation, Gut Feelings, a psychosocial approach to gastrointestinal illness, laid the foundation for his vision of a center where psychology would be seamlessly integrated with Western and Eastern medicines. In 2021, Dr. de Mello shared with the world his unique brand of healing by publishing this book, Bloated: How to Reclaim Your Gut Health and Eat Without Pain. Dr. Edison de Mello, welcome to the Upworthy interview.
Such a pleasure to be here with you, Craig, and your audience. Thank you for having me.
I want to start with going back to your humble beginnings in Rio. You dedicated this book to your grandmother, your first integrative medicine teacher. What are some of the things that she taught you?
And she still is, by the way. She still is in so many ways my guiding principle in healing as I continue to find ways to reach people, to help them optimize their health. Grandma, or Nana, as we called her, is still right here. I can almost feel her presence when I'm doing that. She was all about love and compassion. And my grandmother was a very small woman. She was probably 4'8", 4'9", but yet she was the tallest woman I ever met. Her passion, her platform was generosity. And she had very little, and the little that she had, she made a point to share it with those less fortunate. So this idea of generosity, compassion, seeing every being's, anybody that she met as fully capable and never broken is what set me on this path.
So this book focuses on a very common malady affecting so many of us: bloating and inflammation. It's also about gut health, which may be an entirely new concept to many of our viewers. What are the major differences between bloating and inflammation?
Actually, one doesn't come without the other, right? Inflammation is the common denominator on every malady that we humans or in the animal kingdom actually face, right? So if you have a cold, you are somewhat inflamed. If you have an allergy, you are inflamed. And the truth is also, or this concept is also true when you have chronic diseases. And so when your gut is bloated, the question is, why is it bloated? What kind of inflammation is it going through? And it may be something as simple as eating inflammatory foods, which all of us in today's world, in a way, know where they are, right? We talk about gluten, we talk about dairy, we talk about, processed foods. We talk about foods that are not really wholesome. So those foods create a reaction in your body, and that reaction is called inflammation.
So you write that your passion is to help every patient get the best possible results by integrating proven scientific approaches while also drawing together the newest technology advances from traditional Western medicine with the ancient wisdom and healing from the East.
Right.
Now, how are you able to balance this in your practice?
It's interesting that you pose that question, because a lot of people that I come in contact with ask the same question, because they think in a way that integrative medicine or functional medicine, which is in a way interchangeably the same, is a new discipline, and it's not. Integrative medicine was described by philosophers such as Paracelsus, was a physician, Swiss physician, who lived 500 years ago, as a connection of all parts of the human organism. The father of modern medicine, Hippocrates, wrote about it, right? You are what you eat, for example, also 500 years ago. And what happened is one may ask, so why did this discipline, this integration of all parts became lost in the practice of medicine? Well, because there's something called industrialization, right? We became overly specified in everything that we did. There was wars happening in the world where things have to be done very quickly. And the idea of waiting to or waiting for the body to be able to tell us what was happening was no longer feasible. There was no time. There was a short of physicians. Of course, we have things like imaging studies, right? We have surgeries that keep, or surgical procedures that keep evolving as we speak. But what's missing in Western medicine is the passion of really looking at people and ask them the question, why the disease and why now?
So, one of the unique elements of your practice is the fact that when you first meet a new patient, you sit down with them in your office for 2 hours and just talk. In the book you write, I want to meet my patients before I meet their disease. What led you to come up with this innovative idea as a starting point to treatment?
Well, excellent question. First was my experience as a sick child. When I lived in Brazil, I had severe asthma. And my parents didn't have a lot of means, and I saw them really struggling to understand what was happening to their kid. And the doctors had all the good intention to make sure that I survived this condition, but they did not have the wisdom at the time or the time to sit down with them and explain to them what was happening to this child's body. So fast forward 10 years later, I'm now in the presence of my grandmother creating all these potions, herbal potions, with herbs that she would grew herself in her yard. And one of the things that she did before she created any potion to anybody was meet with them. And she wanted to understand the constitution of who that person was, so to speak. Who are you? Why are you feeling the symptoms right now? She wanted them to describe the quality of their symptoms. So I had those two really incredible experiences that informed me of the kind of medicine that I wanted to practice.
So, the cornerstone of your practice is this correlation between the mind and the body with an emphasis on gut health.
Yeah.
At what point in your career did you decide that gut health would be the focus of your healing practice?
Very early on, right? I had the experience of living in very tumultuous times in Rio, and I lived very close to a project called City of God, and there's a movie about that actually, right? The City of
Great
God.
movie.
Yeah, yeah. I actually never watched the whole movie because it was too close to home.
Right.
But I read about it and I saw snippets of it, and I remember that how I dealt with fear was through my gut. And I remember, whether there were a lot of gunshots going around me or the unsafety of walking home from school, that how that condition would manifest in my body was through my gut. So hence the concept of gut feelings, which then became my research topic for my doctorate dissertation. And so from early on, even though I didn't have the scientific knowledge, I knew that my body and my mind were intrinsically connected. What I was seeing or hearing were the gunshots or the danger around me. What I was feeling was the fear in my gut. So hence the idea that I also write in the book or in the dissertation, which is the gut-brain axis. There is a highway of information going on between those two incredible organs. And then as I became educated and started to do my research in gut health, I realized that there was so much to explore. And as I was exploring this, doing research in a very challenging hospital, I was at at a hospital called Highland Hospital in Oakland, California, which at that time was an extremely dangerous neighborhood. So here I'm back to the same, in a way, to the same situation that I was as a child, where we had to go through metal detectors to go to the ER, for example, as I was doing my research. And I started to realize that I was too feeling a lot of butterflies in my gut whenever I walked in. And so as I went, as I delved into the research, I realized that I wanted to do more and I wanted to know more. And so that's when I decided that psychology was going to be the foundation through which I could get to medicine.
What I found fascinating, and I frankly have never read about this in such detail, is the correlation that you make between the foods we eat and our mental health. On page 4 of the book, you write, bacteria in the gut can affect mental states, mood, cognition, and mental problems. How did you come to these conclusions?
Again, these are conclusions that have been really elucidated and researched for, thousands of years, hundreds of years, from, as I said, from Paracelsus to Hippocrates. They were writing about this idea that the gut and the mind and your heart are intrinsically connected. And then a way to explain that, physiologically speaking, is to talk about hormonal function. And as I looked at the gut, I realized, but the gut is also has at its main function, or one of its main function, the creation of serotonin. And serotonin is the happy hormone, is the feel-good hormone. So most of us think that serotonin is created in our brains, but actually 95% of it is created in your gut. And then when you look at the gut and serotonin, if you're not producing, or if your gut is inflamed in a way that is impairing your serotonin metabolism, you're depressed, you're not happy. No matter what you do, life is not working for you. And in some situations, we feel it's working against you.
So that leads me into my next question, because in the book, Bloated, you go into detail about the symptoms many of us suffer from, like bloating, gassiness, fatigue, moodiness, feeling bad about our appearance, feeling depressed, and you relate them back to gut health.
Mm-hmm.
You point out some of the factors that contribute to these symptoms, for instance, like poor diet, our eat on the go culture, stress, overuse of antibiotics, processed foods, exposure to pollutants, and a general unhealthy relationship to food. So, what are some of the lifestyle changes we should all consider making to get, as you put it, a leg up on bloat and inflammation?
Listen to your body. It's going to tell you, right? We know when we eat something that the body doesn't like. And what we do, we ignore that language and we go to the language of the mind, or the language of your taste buds. Your taste buds language or desires is in a lot of ways different than the language of your gut, what it needs. So when the body talks to us through symptoms, are we listening or are we ignoring it? The second step is to really go to what doesn't work for you. I mean, we know the sugar is toxic.
I want to ask you my next question, which I think is related to what you're saying, because you make a really powerful statement in the book that human beings have lost their natural instinct to know what is good for their overall well being. Can you elaborate on that?
It's the idea of listening to your gut. And I see that when I go into restaurants and I see, usually I see different kinds of people eating, right? There's those who can really have a conversation and connect, and there are those who are on the cell phone. My grandmother used to say, and it's so true for me today, she used to say, you are given 2 ears and one mouth for a reason, right? So listen twice as much as you talk,
Right,
right?
right.
And so that's what I would say to the audience. Listen to your body, connect with it, ask the question, why, what is my body telling me, and why am I not listening?
So let's talk about diets for a moment. You mention in the book some of the most popular diet crazes that people have flocked to in an attempt to do the right thing for their health and well being, like the paleo diet, the keto diet, the Mediterranean diet, and a bunch of other diets that have copyrights. So we're not going to mention those right now. Is there a one size fits all diet, or is that just a fantasy?
No, there's not a magic diet that works for all of us. It would be wonderful if there was, right? Um, there's a diet that works specifically to you when you know what part of your system is off. Recently, I was at a presentation and somebody asked me a similar question. And what I said, which I want to repeat here, is that, look, there's 8 billion people on the planet, and there's 8 billion fingerprints, different fingerprints. There will never be somebody with a fingerprint like yours, similar to yours, because it's all a constellation of genetic factors, lifestyle. And so when you look at diet, look at it that way. What is it that I want to accomplish? And what is something that I can commit to? We have to ask that question. Why is it that I gravitate towards the junk food? Is that only because my taste buds want me to, or is there a secondary gain of me not really feeling incredibly good about myself and keep repeating the same narrative? So I think the answer to your question is no, there's not a magic diet 21. There are diets that have proven in the world of cardiovascular medicine, for example, such as the Mediterranean diet that you mentioned, that it has been proven scientifically to decrease cardiovascular inflammation. And that diet has been very successful, but what's also successful along with the diet is consistency, right? Is in a way to be happy with who you are, where you are in your life. And if you're not happy with who you are, the relationship that you're in, then we need to go work on that as well, along with the eating regimen. So diets such as, like I said, the Mediterranean diet, the paleo diet, are scientifically proven to work. And they will be more successful if you look at all other aspects of your life, including, why am I overeating?
So, in the United States, many of us eat a lot of processed foods because it's easy and it's also perceived to be cost effective. What has processed foods done to us from both a physical health and a mental health perspective?
Processed foods and what junk food has done to us is created this illusion of immediate gratification. Instead of saying, I am going to make sure that I will schedule 45 minutes for lunch or even half an hour, we schedule 15 minutes. And you don't have to go very far, but you go into our school cafeterias and see how long the kids are given for lunch and what they're being fed. And maybe a disease longevity will be significantly decreased.
So, what are some of the foods that are the main offenders causing bloat and inflammation?
Well, the main one, right, and the three main big ones are your sugar, your overly processed wheat, right? Your dairy. Those are the three big ones. And then you can, down the line, you can see all the foods that are connected to those three, like your chips, for instance, your soda.
So, now that we know who the main offenders are, what are some of the foods we should all be incorporating into our diets to avoid bloat and inflammation?
So look at not only at what you're eating, but the time of the foods that you choose, or the time that you choose to eat specific foods. So I would say eat wholesome food, avoid canned foods, avoid overly processed food. Look at the time of the day that you're eating. And how about eating only 80% what you think you need to eat?
Okay, here's something everyone should be interested in. How does bloat and inflammation affect our sex lives?
The $1 million question. I'm asked that question all the time. Okay, so in the beginning of your podcast, we talked about the fact that the gut is responsible for 95% of production of serotonin, that feel-good hormone, right? The gut is also one of the most affected organs by stress. And so when you're stressed, the hormone cortisol, I've nicknamed it the rain in your parade hormone. It destroys everything, or rather it decreases everything. That's for those of us who are sexually active, it's the idea of, honey, I have a headache, right? Because you're so stressed out, you haven't been able to stop and make time for you to be able to allow your body to feel the desire and the stamina to engage in sexual activity. So in that regard, when you take care of your gut, because the gut, as I said, in my interpretation, is another organ that is connected to your endocrine system. It's an essential organ of hormone. And given that testosterone, libido, feeling relaxed before sexual activity are hormonally based, if your gut is inflamed, if your gut is stressed, so is your desire to engage in sex activity because your sex hormones are decreased.
So, what I love most about this book is that first you educate and then you propose a plan of action. Can you give our listeners just some basic first steps for them to begin their journey to bloat and inflammation reduction?
The first thing that I would say is something that we've been talking about all along is listen to your body. You know the foods that are not working for you. We can talk about what to eat and how to decrease inflammation and bloating until the cows come home. And believe me, I have enough material to share with you for hours on end. But that's not the answer alone. It's part of the answer. Don't eat processed food. Chew your food. Don't eat late at night, right? Make sure that you don't drink a lot of water while you're eating because it's going to bloat you. You drink the water either before or after. Make sure that you don't eat on the run. Make sure that you really connect with your body and realize the incredible piece of work that it needs to do. All of this is part of a good dietary regimen or the good eating regimen. But I think, given the psychology and medicine together, that I think the number one question that we need to ask ourselves is, do we like our bodies? Are we punishing it?
Dr. Edison de Mello, thank you so much for joining us on the Upworthy interview.
Thank you for having me again, Craig. It was a pleasure.
For more about Dr. de Mello and a link to purchase the print edition or audiobook Bloated, go to www.akashacenter.com. The Upworthy interview is created and hosted by Craig Jablin, executive producer Eric Pfeiffer, produced by Good Inc. in association with Northgate Studios, and our show is edited by Mark Wales. We'll see y'all soon, right here on the Upworthy interview.